Now, imagine standing before someone who could erase your existence with a single thought, and not even realizing it. That was exactly the situation these cultivators found themselves in. Because the moment Han Li spoke, everything changed. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Amuse myself with you. Over a mere grade 6 demon core. Han Li raised an eyebrow, a faint unreadable smile appearing on his face. Humph. If it were an ordinary grade 6 demon core, it would not be worth our attention. But the core of a lightning whale is different. Moreover, the moment you arrived, you dismissed Brother Fan's demon core outright. That alone warrants some explanation. The cultivator surnamed Sun finally spoke, his voice cold. He was an elderly man with a stern and severe expression. Han Li gave a soft chuckle and replied calmly, "You spent considerable effort to kill that thunder whale. By the time you succeeded, it had already exhausted most of its demonic power. Unless its demon core has been replenished, its intrinsic quality is limited. It seems you two have not slain many high-grade demon beasts. Otherwise, you would already understand this." At these words, Cultivator Fan and Sun exchanged glances, hesitation appearing on their faces. The white-haired old man spoke cautiously. "Even if what you say about the demon core is true, why have you come here?" Fellow Taoist Fan clearly used an illusion technique to conceal this place. "Could it be that you came specifically for us? A mere illusion formation is beneath my notice. As for you, this is my first time in these seas. There is no reason for me to seek you out deliberately. My mood happens to be good today, so I have remained courteous. But if you continue to ask questions, I will lose interest in answering. My previous terms still stand. Are you willing to exchange a map with me? I do not intend to remain here for long." As Han Li finished speaking, his expression grew indifferent. Though his voice was not loud, his words struck heavily upon the hearts of the cultivators in the pavilion. Realizing that Han Li was an unfathomable figure and sensing the confidence behind his tone, none of them dared to respond. After observing him for a moment, the beautiful woman in green suddenly asked, "From your manner of speech, you do not seem to be a cultivator of our 5 dragon seas. Did you come from Great Jin? Do you happen to know Senior Xiang? You know fellow Taoist Xiang?" Han Li looked at her, narrowing his eyes slightly, a trace of surprise appearing within them. A subtle change passed through the woman's gaze. She rose, performed a respectful curtsy, and spoke with great deference. "Senior Xiang once stayed on my island for a time. He gave me guidance in cultivation, which benefited me greatly. Since you are acquainted with him, could it be that you are also a deity transformation stage senior? A deity transformation stage cultivator?" Upon hearing this, the others were startled and rose abruptly. Cultivator Fan and the stern old man both showed clear traces of fear, recalling their earlier words. Han Li paid them no attention. Instead, he looked at the woman and said with a slight frown, "Since you have recognized this, there is no need for concealment. When did you last see fellow Taoist Xiang?" The woman smiled and replied, "This junior last saw him 200 years ago. At that time, I had not yet formed my nascent soul. Without his guidance, I fear I would still be stuck at the core formation stage. 200 years ago. That coincided with the time when Zhang Jili and the others discovered the spatial node." Han Li's thoughts moved quickly. In an instant, he determined that her words were truthful. His expression eased slightly as he said, "Since you know fellow Taoist Xiang, that is sufficient. Take this demon core and give me a map." He raised his hand and casually tossed the rare demon core toward her. The woman's face lit with joy. She lifted her hand and drew the demon core into her grasp, then bowed in thanks. Without delay, she retrieved a faint green jade slip and sent it to Han Li. Han Li caught it and immediately scanned it with his spiritual sense. After comparing it with the information left by Zhang Jili, he quickly located the position of the spatial node. It was not far from here. At his current pace, he could arrive within a month. "Very good." He nodded in satisfaction, then spoke in a firm, unquestionable tone. "Now I have a few questions. Listen carefully. At this point, he stood at the peak of the mortal realm. Aside from the gradual erosion of his lifespan, there was nothing left in this world that could truly threaten him. The green-robed woman naturally agreed without hesitation. In the moments that followed, Han Li's lips moved, yet no sound emerged. The woman's eyes shifted subtly. After his silent transmission ended, she immediately responded in the same manner. Hearing her reply, Han Li stroked his chin and lowered his head in thought. The other cultivators did not dare to breathe too loudly. The oppressive atmosphere kept them completely still, fearing that even the slightest disturbance might offend this deity transformation stage expert. After a moment, Han Li seemed to recall something. He raised his head and gave a faint chuckle. "I have matters to attend to, so I will take my leave. You may continue." With a casual wave of his sleeve, a flash of azure light appeared, and his figure vanished instantly. Even after he disappeared, the cultivators remained frozen in place, still affected by his presence. Only after some time did they finally exhale in relief. Their gazes then turned toward the Thunder Whale's demon core in the woman's hand filled with envy. To obtain such a rare demon core in exchange for a map and a few words, this was truly fortunate. The green-robed woman noticed their expressions. Calmly, she stored the demon core away, then said with a light smile, "Fellow Taoists, since Senior has departed, let us continue." The scholarly man sighed, forcing a wry smile. "Fairy Bai, there is no need to rush. I did not expect that you once had ties with the deity transformation cultivator. It seems we have been somewhat disrespectful." The woman shook her head gently. "That was long ago when I was still at the core formation stage. I would not dare claim any real connection. Senior Shang only gave me a few pointers. Even so, to have received guidance from a deity transformation cultivator is something others can only dream of." Cultivator Fan spoke with admiration. Then he frowned slightly and asked, puzzled, "But it is strange. Why would such peak existences from Great Jin come to our Five Dragon Seas? Could something major have occurred?" The old man chuckled. "That is possible. But since deity transformation cultivators are involved, how could we hope to participate? If we are careless, they could eliminate us with a mere gesture. It is best not to inquire further. If we were to offend such an expert..." At these words, everyone's expression shifted, and they nodded in agreement. As for their true thoughts, only heaven could know. While they speculated about Han Li's purpose, he had already traveled thousands of kilometers away as a streak of azure light. From the green-robed woman's answers, he had gained a general understanding of the Five Dragon Seas. There were no deity transformation stage cultivators in this region. His final concern had been resolved. With his current cultivation, Han Li could move at astonishing speeds if he exerted his full power. However, doing so would disturb the surrounding heaven and earth, qi gradually consuming his lifespan. For this reason, he chose to travel at a steady, moderate pace instead of rushing. A month later, he arrived without incident before a sea region shrouded in dense fog. He gazed at the white mist ahead, frowned slightly, and then entered without hesitation. After flying through it for nearly 2 hours, he suddenly came to a stop. Looking around, he formed an incantation gesture with his hands and raised them slightly. Uttering a single word, "break," 2 thick bolts of lightning flashed forth, striking the air with resounding thunder. The surrounding mist twisted violently before dispersing, revealing a clear area spanning several kilometers. Below him lay a small island with a few buildings scattered across it. Upon seeing this, a trace of satisfaction appeared on Han Li's face. He muttered, "Old eccentric Xiang, and the others did not deceive me. They truly left disciples behind to guard the spatial node. If I had delayed another 200 years, there might have been no one left here." As he spoke, 3 streaks of light rose from the island and flew directly towards him. Han Li remained calm, standing in midair, with his hands behind his back as he waited. The light faded, revealing 3 middle-aged cultivators, 2 men and 1 woman. All 3 were at the core formation stage. After seeing Han Li clearly, they immediately bowed with smiles. "We pay our respects to Senior Han, by order of martial ancestor." Xiang, we have long awaited your arrival. You are disciples of fellow Taoist Xiang. You have seen me before." Han Li's expression shifted slightly. "We are indeed his disciples. Our master left behind a portrait of you. That is how we recognized Senior," one of them replied respectfully. Han Li nodded and gave a faint smile. "You have endured hardship over the years. I will not treat you unfairly. In the future, I will arrange for my own disciples to guard this place in your stead. You will no longer need to remain here." Hearing this, the three were overjoyed. They immediately invited Han Li to descend to one of the buildings below, but he shook his head. He wished to inspect the spatial node first. The three readily agreed and led him toward the edge of the island. After flying for 5 kilometers, the three of them maintained silence. Han Li extended his spiritual sense ahead and, as if detecting something, quietly increased his speed. After a short while, the group came to a halt. Han Li narrowed his eyes. Suspended in the air before him was a massive sphere of grey light. A chill spread through his body. The sphere was nearly perfectly round, measuring about 1/2 kilometer in diameter. Though it appeared dim and indistinct, it gave off a sense of immeasurable depth. A faint halo slowly rotated within it. Although Han Li already knew the answer, he still took a light breath and asked, "This should be the spatial node." The woman among the three replied, "Yes, Senior. This is the spatial node that Master and the others entered. To stabilize the entrance, Master and the others expended great effort to place a temporary sealing restriction on it. This not only preserves its stability, but also suppresses spatial fluctuations, preventing cultivators from the 5 dragon seas from detecting it." When she mentioned xianxia, a trace of sorrow appeared on her face. The three of them clearly understood the meaning behind the extinguishing of xianxia's primal soul lamp. "So that is the case. I was wondering why the spatial fluctuations here were so faint. Fellow Taoist Xiang and the others sealed it." Han Li let out a soft sigh as he looked at the sphere of light. However, the 3 core formation cultivators exchanged glances as if communicating silently. "There is something we wish to report, Senior," one of the male cultivators said hesitantly. "What is it?" Han Li asked, slightly surprised. "We have guarded this place for over 200 years. Although Master Xiang sealed the spatial node about 100 years ago, it began to fluctuate intermittently. Each time, the intervals between fluctuations grew shorter. In recent years, it has begun to fluctuate once every year, each time lasting about half a month." Han Li's expression changed slightly. "So that's how it is. You mean the seal will not last much longer?" The other man spoke solemnly. "I'm afraid that is correct. Based on this trend, in another 100 years, the spatial node may become completely unstable, assuming it does not disappear altogether. At that time, it may not be as easy for Senior to enter as it was for Master Xiang and the others. In 100 years, that fast." Han Li's expression turned grim. "This is only our speculation. It may not be entirely accurate," the female cultivator added quickly with a faint smile. Han Li fell into thought before slowly speaking. "I can only remain here for a few years and observe it personally. I must carefully examine this spatial node. I will not be leaving any time soon." The disciples of xianxia naturally did not object and responded respectfully. Soon after, Han Li waved his hand, dismissing the three so they could return to the island, leaving him alone. In the blink of an eye, only Han Li remained before the enormous sphere of light. His expression shifted repeatedly as he stared at it. The words of the 3 cultivators weighed heavily on his mind. As he contemplated, his face grew increasingly solemn. "If their assessment is correct, then I must enter the spatial node within 100 years. That leaves little time, and the risk of failure will certainly increase. But if I miss this opportunity, even with another 1,000 years, I may never find another path to the spirit realm. Those old eccentrics searched for so long and entered immediately upon finding one. I have already given them most of the information I possess. The chances of discovering another usable spatial node are extremely slim." Han Li remained beneath the sphere of light for nearly an entire day before returning to the island. By the time he arrived, the 3 disciples had already cleared out the largest building for his use. Han Li was quite satisfied. In addition to their efforts in guarding the spatial node, he rewarded each of them with a magic treasure and several bottles of medicinal pills. The core formation cultivators were overjoyed and repeatedly expressed their gratitude. Soon after, Han Li used the myriad distance talisman to inform Nangongwan and the others, requesting that several trustworthy core formation cultivators be sent to the island. He also specifically asked for Tian Qinna to accompany them. With the aid of Han Li's medicinal pills, Tian Qinna had been focusing almost entirely on researching formations and restrictions. Already highly talented in this field, her continued dedication had brought her to a level far surpassing Han Li's own mastery. He anticipated that her knowledge of formations would be essential for his eventual entry into the spatial node. Afterward, Han Li spent most of his days observing the sphere of light, then returning to the island to analyze the changes he had witnessed. A year later, Tian Qinna and 3 core formation cultivators finally arrived. Han Li dismissed the original 3 cultivators and took direct control of the area. Although Tian Qinna was still at the late core formation stage, Han Li gave her a bottle of returning sun water, increasing her chances of condensing a nascent soul. Once she arrived, Han Li immediately brought her to inspect the spatial node, hoping she could determine whether the seal could be reinforced to buy him more time. Unfortunately, despite her exceptional mastery of formations, she had little experience with spatial power. After several months of intensive study, she eventually devised a method to gradually strengthen the seal. However, this method only had a 30% chance of preventing the collapse of the entrance. Though the odds were low, Han Li had no better option and decided to proceed. As for the rare materials required, he could only search for them throughout the 5 dragon seas. With his abilities, this took him approximately 6 years. During this time, he confirmed that the situation was exactly as Xianxia disciples had described. The spatial node fluctuated once each year with shorter intervals and increasingly violent disturbances. As a result, the satisfaction he had once felt upon entering the deity transformation stage gradually disappeared. After Tian Qinna completed the extremely complex formation and added another layer of seals to the spatial node, Han Li began considering whether he should take the opportunity to travel through the mortal realm in search of defensive treasures and techniques to prepare for entering the node. However, just a few days before his planned departure, a sudden flash of light appeared beyond the sea mist and reached its edge in an instant. The light faded, revealing a woman dressed in silver robes. She appeared to be in her 20s, with delicate features and an elegant bearing. Her eyes shimmered faintly with silver light. She examined the mist for a moment before flipping her hand to produce a jade slip. After scanning it with her spiritual sense, a faint smile appeared on her lips. This should be the spatial node mentioned by those juniors from the Heavenly Devil sect, she muttered softly. Having confirmed its location, her figure moved, transforming into a streak of silver light as she flew forward. The sea mist churned, completely concealing her presence. At present, the island within the mist was no longer guarded in the same manner as before. While Tian Qinna had reinforced the seal on the spatial node, she had also set up several profound formations around the island. These were powerful enough to trap even a nascent soul cultivator for a time. As a result, the silver-robed woman was caught off guard and immediately triggered the formations upon entering. The restrictions activated. Countless lightning birds appeared in the air and swooped toward her, while dense waves of wind blades and ice spikes shot forward. The silver-robed woman was briefly startled, but she quickly let out a cold snort and raised her hand. A burst of icy white wind erupted from her body, rapidly expanding into a violent storm that surrounded her. Thunder roared through the sky as the storm swept outward, shattering all incoming attacks before they could reach her. The disturbance immediately drew the attention of the 4 core formation cultivators stationed on the island. Alarmed, they flew into the air to investigate. The silver-robed woman glanced at them, and her expression turned cold. She raised her hand toward the 4 cultivators preparing to strike. At that moment, Han Li's voice sounded beside her ear, calm and controlled. "Fairy Feng, please show mercy. My subordinates were only acting under my orders." I hope you will not take offense. It's you." The silver-robed woman's expression changed noticeably upon hearing this, though her raised hand did not immediately lower. "Why are you here? Have you also reached the deity transformation stage?" The silver-robed woman was none other than the 10th grade phoenix Han Li had encountered many years ago. A trace of strain was visible on her face. She had personally witnessed Han Li advance from the mid-nascent soul stage to the late-nascent soul stage. Now he had already stepped into the deity transformation stage. His rate of progression was far too fast. In this realm, there were over 100 late-nascent soul cultivators, yet only a handful had reached the deity transformation stage. Ha! You've also advanced to the deity transformation stage, haven't you? I don't know how you learned of this place, but you must be here for the spatial node as well. In that case, we should cooperate. After all, this isn't the first time we've helped each other, Han Li said with a light chuckle, transmitting his voice to her. As his voice faded, the lightning and fire that had been bombarding the gel force winds suddenly disappeared. The nearby restriction deactivated on its own. The 4 core formation cultivators below had also heard Han Li's voice transmission. Upon realizing that the silver-robed woman was a deity transformation stage demon beast, their faces turned pale. They immediately stepped aside and adopted respectful postures as if they had come solely to welcome her. The Ice Phoenix remained silent for a moment. Then she raised her brows slightly and glanced at the 4 cultivators. Her body transformed into a ball of silver light and descended toward the island below. Han Li's 4 subordinates silently exhaled in relief and hurriedly followed her, accompanying her to the largest pavilion on the island. Looking ahead, the woman saw a young man in azure robes standing at the pavilion entrance, watching her with a faint smile. He was the human cultivator she had met over a century ago, the one she found particularly detestable. She stopped over 100 feet away from Han Li, her expression cold. "You arrived here quite quickly, fellow Taoist Han. Where is the spatial node?" she asked. Han Li smiled and casually waved a hand toward the 4 core formation cultivators. They immediately withdrew. Only then did he reply calmly, "You've already arrived, so there's no need to rush. The spatial node is not far from here. Why not speak for a moment? I can lead you there afterward. I have nothing to discuss with you. Do you think reaching the deity transformation stage allows you to intimidate me?" Her expression grew colder. Despite her words, a trace of caution remained in her tone. "You are here for the spatial node, which means you intend to ascend to the spirit realm, just as I do. Cooperation would benefit us both," Han Li said evenly. "You expect me to cooperate with a human cultivator?" The Ice Phoenix let out a faint mocking sneer. "I assume you already know what happened to fellow Taoist Xiang and the others. Otherwise, you would not have come here. You possess spatial abilities that allow you to tear open and traverse spatial rifts freely. Those abilities will be extremely useful when facing the boundary power within the spatial node. You have also witnessed my abilities. I believe you can judge that I am not inferior to you. I possess 2 divine spirit treasures, so I will not be a burden. If we join forces, our chances of survival will be far higher than if we act alone. Otherwise, you have already seen the outcome of those who attempted it independently. As for old Devil Che, I heard he entered another spatial node. He left no soul lamp behind, so his fate is unknown. However, that node was even more unstable than this one. I am not optimistic about his survival." Han Li spoke in a steady, unhurried manner. A cold glint flickered through the silver-robed woman's eyes. "After reaching the deity transformation stage, my lifespan has more than doubled. I can remain in the human world for tens of thousands of years without concern. Why would I rush to ascend to the spirit realm?" "That may be true," Han Li replied, stroking his chin. "But do you think the spatial node will remain for tens of thousands of years? If you miss this one, do you believe another will be easy to find?" Her expression shifted slightly. "What are you implying?" "Nothing in particular. I only wish to inform you that this spatial node will remain stable for roughly 100 years before it collapses and disappears. If you are confident in finding a better one in the future, then you may disregard what I said." Han Li said with a faint smile. She hesitated, suspicion appearing on her face. Such a coincidence. Are you deceiving me? Han Li did not press the matter. Instead, he changed the subject. You can verify the truth yourself by observing the spatial node for a few days. I must leave to search for methods to resist the boundary power between realms. I will leave one of my female disciples here. You may instruct her if needed. If you are willing to guide her in my absence, I would be grateful on her behalf. You intend to leave this island. It seems you truly plan to enter the spatial node soon. She paused, then nodded reluctantly. Very well. Your proposal appears sincere. I will remain here for now. But if I discover that you have deceived me, I will leave immediately. Han Li was naturally pleased by her agreement. He raised a hand, sending a streak of fiery light into the sky. It vanished in an instant. It was a voice transmission talisman. He then attempted some casual conversation, but the silver-robed woman responded only briefly before falling silent. Han Li remained calm and made no further effort to engage her. After a short time, a streak of white light approached from the direction of the spatial node and descended beside him. The light faded, revealing a slender woman in yellow robes with refined features. It was Xianxia. Xianxia greets master, she said, bowing respectfully before standing to the side. So this is your disciple. The ice phoenix looked at her, surprise appearing in her eyes. Is that the dragon cry physique? Han Li smiled. Indeed. Though she is female, she possesses a physique that should belong only to men. For her, it is more curse than blessing. I have heard that the glacial essence cultivated by the Ice Phoenix race is highly effective for purifying essence and balancing yin and yang. I hope you might grant her a few drops, allowing her to remove the flaw in her physique and restore her path toward the Great Tao. Although Han Li had rarely spoken of Xianxia's condition, he had spent considerable effort researching it. This was the only viable solution he had found. Naturally, he did not wish to miss this opportunity. Humph, a few drops. You think too highly of yourself. Our glacial essence is extremely precious. How could I give it to a human so casually? Perhaps I will consider it when I am in a suitable mood. The Ice Phoenix replied coldly. Han Li did not show anger. Instead, he laughed lightly and turned to Xianxia. Of course. Qina, attend carefully to this senior. Fellow Taoist Phoenix will remain here for some time. You will be responsible for her needs. Upon hearing that a possible cure existed, Xianxia's eyes brightened. She immediately agreed, her expression earnest. The Ice Phoenix glanced at Han Li coldly, but said nothing. The remaining arrangements proceeded smoothly. Han Li personally guided the Ice Phoenix to the spatial node. He then remained on the island for half a month. After confirming that she held no ill intent toward Xianxia, he departed as a streak of azure light. While flying, a small azure cauldron emerged from his sleeve. Fellow Taoist, Han, do you truly intend to cooperate with this Ice Phoenix? A child's projection appeared atop the cauldron. Han Li looked at the child with mild surprise. In recent years, the child rarely appeared unless requesting materials or pills. This sudden emergence was unexpected. That is the plan. Her spatial abilities will be valuable within the spatial node, Han Li replied. That is reasonable. The Ice Phoenix race lacks the true Phoenix bloodline, but they have inherited its spatial affinity. With her assistance, the journey will be somewhat safer. However, before you leave the human world, should you not release me from the Heaven Void Cauldron? Have you forgotten? Of course not, Han Li said calmly. On that note, it has been many years since I gave you that half-page of the Golden Jade Tome. It is time you shared your findings. I have deciphered part of its contents, the child replied, frowning slightly. However, I cannot guarantee their accuracy, nor can they be tested in the human world. Attempting to craft an immortal talisman in a place with such scarce origin, qi would drain the practitioner before completion. Do you still wish to see my findings? Of course. I also intend to take back the half-page and study it myself in the spirit realm, Han Li said. In that case here. The child stomped lightly on the cauldron lid. It opened slightly, releasing two balls of spiritual light, one yellow, one green, which Han Li caught immediately. They revealed a yellow wooden box and a green jade slip. After opening the wooden box, Han Li found that it indeed contained the half-page he had requested. He then extended his spiritual sense into the green jade slip. Although there was no way for him to fully comprehend its contents in such a short time, nothing about it appeared to be false. He calmly stored both items away, then turned to the small child with a faint smile. "You have fulfilled your promise. Naturally, I will not go back on mine. I will begin using a secret technique to gradually sever your avatar from the heaven-void cauldron. However, this process will likely take several decades. You will need to be patient, fellow Taoist Endless Sky. Of course, as long as you can free me before your ascension, I am satisfied with any arrangement." The small child seemed quite content. As soon as he finished speaking, the projection slowly faded from view. Not long after, Han Li opened his mouth and released a streak of green light, which swept toward the small cauldron. The cauldron quickly shrank within the azure glow before being drawn into his mouth. At almost the same instant, the nascent soul meditating within Han Li's body suddenly opened its eyes. With a small wave of its hand, a tiny azure cauldron appeared before it. The cauldron was tossed into the air. Immediately afterward, the nascent soul formed a hand seal. Azure light radiated from its body, enveloping both itself and the cauldron, forming a hazy mass of light that obscured everything within. Meanwhile, Han Li's expression remained unchanged. His speed increased slightly, and in the blink of an eye, he vanished into the distance. From that point onward, a mysterious cultivator began appearing at various cultivation locations throughout the human world. This person specialized in collecting rare treasures' secret techniques and cultivation arts, particularly those related to spatial abilities or possessing exceptional defensive properties. However, his standards were extremely high. Very few items could truly catch his interest. Moreover, he traveled swiftly, frequently changing his appearance and attire. Each time he appeared in a new place, he left just as quickly. If he desired something, he would either purchase it by force or bypass all restrictions guarding it, then disappear without a trace. What others knew about him was limited. His strength was unfathomable. Even nascent soul cultivators were as helpless as infants before him. Fortunately, he was only interested in acquiring treasures and did not harm others unless absolutely necessary. Because of this, although the sects and factions that lost their treasures were unwilling, they could only accept their misfortune. None dared to pursue or provoke such a terrifying existence. As for ordinary cultivators, they remained completely unaware of his existence. Thus, year after year passed. 70 years later, on the peak of an unnamed mountain, the mysterious cultivator stood silently with an indifferent expression. Above him in the air, two elderly men glared at him coldly. The mysterious cultivator now appeared as a middle-aged scholar dressed in black robes. The two elderly men were respectively at the early and mid-nascent soul stages. "I don't care who you are," said an elderly man with thick eyebrows in a cold tone. "If you wish to avoid injury, return the shimmering golden ring you stole. The fact that you bypassed all our restrictions suggests you are at least at the mid-nascent soul stage. Why would you stoop to such petty theft?" The mysterious cultivator had not been traveling particularly fast, allowing them to catch up easily. However, they could not discern his cultivation level, which made them cautious. For that reason, they chose to probe him with words first, instead of attacking immediately. In response, the mysterious cultivator simply raised his hand and tossed an object toward the speaking elder. The elder hesitated briefly before catching it. It was a storage pouch. A puzzled expression appeared on his face. "The shimmering golden ring is useful to me. I am willing to pay with the spirit stones inside that pouch," the mysterious cultivator said calmly, his voice flat and slightly rough. The elder was initially startled by the sheer number of spirit stones inside. However, his expression quickly turned furious. "Ridiculous. The shimmering golden ring is our sect's most important treasure. No amount of spirit stones will convince us to sell it. In that case, there is nothing more to discuss. I will not return this treasure," the mysterious cultivator replied indifferently. "Humph. Then I will take back our treasure and your life as well." The other elder, who had narrow eyes, said coldly. He opened his mouth and released a streak of red light, which shot toward the mysterious cultivator's head with alarming speed. Clearly, he intended to seize the treasure by force. However, an unexpected scene unfolded. The mysterious cultivator did not summon any treasure. He merely waved his hand, releasing a burst of grey light into the air. As soon as the red light was struck by the grey light, it immediately slowed and revealed its true form, a small crimson sword, several inches long, radiating a cold glow. The sword was trapped within the grey light, completely immobilized. The elder who had released it was both shocked and enraged. He found that he had entirely lost control over his flying sword. Seeing this, the other elder immediately acted. With a sweep of his sleeve and a shout, he hurled out a golden rectangular object. The object rapidly expanded, transforming into a massive golden brick that descended like a small mountain. The mysterious cultivator showed a hint of interest. He slowly raised his other hand. An even larger surge of grey light swept forward, colliding directly with the golden brick. The moment the grey light touched it, the golden brick's spiritual radiance dimmed. It shrank rapidly and also lost all ability to move. With another casual wave, both the crimson sword and the golden brick drifted toward the mysterious cultivator. At this point, the mid-nascent soul elder was visibly unsettled. He immediately made a grasping motion. A massive white hand appeared above the black-robed scholar and slammed downward with overwhelming force, clearly intending to kill him in a single strike. Yet the cultivator below simply flicked a finger. A flash of golden light appeared, and a strand of sword chi cut cleanly through the white hand, splitting it in two before it dissipated into scattered light. The elder's face turned pale. The mysterious cultivator then held the two treasures and looked up at the elders with a calm, cold gaze. "If you believe I offered too many spirit stones, then I will also take these two treasures. Now are you willing to proceed with the exchange?" The two elders felt their hearts sink. The ease with which their treasures had been taken was beyond belief. To him it seemed no more difficult than taking candy from a child. That grey light was something they could not comprehend at all. Neither of them dared to respond. The mysterious cultivator gave a faint chuckle. He tossed the two treasures back into the air and transformed into a streak of azure light, disappearing into the distance. The elders hesitated briefly before hurriedly retrieving their treasures. They watched the departing light, then looked at each other. After a moment, the thick-browed elder asked hesitantly, "Senior martial brother, should we pursue him?" "Pursue him? Do you wish to die?" The other elder replied with a bitter smile. "He clearly spared us. If we continue to provoke him, he may not be so merciful. But the shimmering golden ring is our sect's most important treasure. How can we explain this to the sect?" The first elder said unwillingly, "We will tell the truth. We encountered someone far beyond our ability to oppose. This is the reality of the cultivation world. The strong dominate the weak. There is nothing we can do. Besides, that ring was not originally ours. Our predecessors seized it from another sect. Now that it has been taken from us, we can only accept it. Let us return. The sect still needs us. We cannot throw our lives away here." With that, the mid-nascent soul elder sighed and departed. The thick-browed elder stood in silence for a long time before finally sighing as well and leaving. Far away in the sky, after traveling tens of thousands of kilometers, the mysterious cultivator finally stopped. A series of crackling sounds came from his body. He grew slightly taller, and azure light flickered across his face, altering his appearance into that of an ordinary young man. This person was Han Li. With a flick of his sleeve, a golden ring appeared in his hand. He gently waved it, and numerous projections emerged. Not bad. In terms of defensive power alone, this ranks among the top 3 treasures I've obtained over the years. Han Li said calmly, a faint smile appearing. "It is time for you to return, fellow Taoist Han." A child's voice sounded from within his sleeve. "If the spatial node collapses before you arrive, you will regret it. There is no need to remind me, fellow Taoist endless sky." I was already preparing to return to the island, Han Li replied. Although I have gathered many treasures and techniques over the years, only 4 or 5 are truly useful. Most are well known, but their actual value is limited. They will be of little use once I enter the spatial node. You are being overly critical, the child said. You are comparing ordinary ancient treasures to spirit treasures like your 8-spirit ruler. Naturally, they will seem inferior. Even so, they are better than nothing. Moreover, you have gained deeper understanding from that half-page of the Golden Jade Tome. These may yet save your life. Perhaps Han Li replied casually, his hand hidden within his sleeve, slowly clenched and then relaxed. What the endless sky beast did not know was that Han Li's greatest gain over these years was neither the treasures, nor the techniques, nor even his insights into the Golden Jade Tome. It was something else entirely. During these past decades, Han Li had been consuming dragon-scale fruits at fixed intervals. These fruits had long been prepared and stored within his storage pouch. Through this steady intake, his physical strength had already surpassed the limits of ordinary human cultivators long ago. The dragon-scale fruits had been cultivated in Devilfall Valley and were among the spirit medicines delivered by the humanoid puppet into his spatial storage. However, Han Li did not consume them daily. Instead, he took one every half-month. The medicinal potency of each fruit was not particularly intense, but if its effects were not refined promptly, they would accumulate gradually within the body. Over several decades, such accumulation could produce backlash that even his mastery of the 3rd layer of the bright jade arts might not be able to withstand. In contrast, the Golden Worm King could consume 1 fruit per day, as worms possessed bodies far more resilient than those of ordinary demon beasts. Because Han Li had spent the majority of his time in seclusion preparing for his breakthrough to the deity transformation stage, he had only devoted about a dozen years to refining the fruits. After that, he shifted his full attention to cultivating the Azure Essence Sword art. Before arriving at the 5 Dragon Seas this time, he had deliberately filled an entire storage pouch with fully ripened dragon-scale fruits. As a result, throughout his journey across the human world over the past decades, he maintained a steady supply. During this time, he also cultivated the bone-tempering art he had acquired by chance, using it to refine the medicinal properties of the fruits. This led to a result that surprised even him. The dragon-scale fruits and the bone-tempering art formed an exceptionally effective combination. The bone-tempering art had originally been extremely difficult to cultivate, but with the aid of the fruits, his progress accelerated significantly. Within just a few decades, he had already mastered several layers. If he examined his body now, he would find that his bones had not only thickened noticeably, but had also taken on a faint golden hue, similar to the color his skin displayed when activating the bright jade arts. In terms of raw strength, he could now easily lift massive rocks weighing several tons without relying on any magical power. Another unexpected benefit was that the dragon-scale fruits also appeared to assist in cultivating the bright jade arts. While practicing the bone-tempering art, he had also advanced to the 4th layer of the bright jade arts. From this, Han Li inferred that the bone-tempering art was likely connected to the sacred provenance plate. It might even have been derived from the bright jade arts themselves. Otherwise, the 2 techniques would not complement each other so seamlessly. After reaching the 4th layer of the bright jade arts, he was able to cultivate several of its accompanying Buddhist secret techniques. When combined with the bright jade arts, these techniques displayed formidable power, further enhancing his overall combat capability. Whenever he consumed dragon-scale fruits, he would temporarily conceal the heaven-void cauldron to prevent the endless sky beast from noticing. Otherwise, his repeated use of such rare fruits would inevitably arouse suspicion. So once the divine essence-fused light reaches full mastery, it turns grey. That is rather unusual. I had expected it to become 5-colored light. Now that you have fully mastered it, I can use its 5 elemental power to suppress treasures of the same attributes. As your cultivation improves, its strength will grow accordingly, so there is no need to cultivate it further. This is a rare ability. Even higher-level cultivators would struggle to deal with it, the small child remarked suddenly. I also did not expect it to change into such a plain color. When I first cultivated it, it indeed displayed 5-colored light. Only after reaching full mastery did it transform into this. Han Li replied, stroking his chin with a thoughtful expression. He had long been puzzled by this matter, but had never voiced it. Now that the small child had raised the question, his own doubts resurfaced. This technique was created by a cultivator of this world. It is not surprising that it would undergo unusual transformations, the child said casually. That makes sense. As long as the power of the divine essence-fused light remains intact, its color is irrelevant, Han Li said with a slight nod. That is the right way to look at it. It seems you truly intend to ascend to the spirit realm soon, Brother Han. In that case, I will not return to the 5 Dragon Seas with you. Let us part ways here. As his voice faded, a ball of azure light shot out from Han Li's sleeve. It revealed itself to be the heaven-void cauldron. A clear ringing sound echoed as the lid shifted slightly. A stream of grey qi emerged, condensing into a small child several feet tall. You can already leave the heaven-void cauldron. I thought you would need more time, Han Li said, surprised. I have also been working on breaking the restriction that bound me. The remaining restraints are no longer sufficient to confine me, the child replied calmly. Han Li regained his composure and asked, I see. Do you intend to remain here, fellow Taoist endless sky? Why not return to the Heaventide prairies or travel elsewhere? This continent is merely a vast island. It cannot compare to regions with deeper cultivation foundations. I am only an avatar of my true body in the spirit realm. There is no need for rapid cultivation, and resources are of little use to me now. I remain here because I recently sensed the aura of one of my kin. Though their bloodline is not pure, I have decided to meet them, the child explained. Han Li paused briefly before smiling. In that case, congratulations, fellow Taoist. Ha ha ha. I did not expect to encounter one of my kind in this human world. I will not accompany you further, fellow Taoist Han. I shall take my leave. The child cupped his fists, then transformed into a streak of grey-white qi and vanished into the distance without hesitation. Han Li stood in place for a long time, watching the direction in which the demonic qi had disappeared. After a while, he murmured, with such a demon beast present, the peaceful days of this continent will likely come to an end. However, that has nothing to do with me. With that, he also departed as a streak of azure light. 2 years later, a streak of azure light passed over the mist-covered seas of the 5 Dragon Seas and vanished into the fog in an instant. When Han Li appeared above the island, more than a dozen cultivators immediately rose to greet him. A trace of cold light flickered in his eyes, but his expression soon softened upon seeing a familiar slender figure. You have finally returned, Han Li. The graceful woman approached him swiftly, her smile calm yet radiant. Why are you here, Wana? I was not planning to visit the scattered star seas so soon. This woman was none other than his Tao companion, Nangong Wan. I was concerned about the spatial node, so I came to take a look. I have been waiting here for several decades, she replied. Several decades? Then you must have arrived not long after I left, Han Li said with a faint chuckle. That seems to be the case. I also met fellow Taoist Phoenix Nangong Wan, added with a light smile. You have already met her? Han Li asked, slightly surprised. Not only that we have become quite close over the years, she replied with a subtle, knowing expression. Han Li fell silent for a moment. Let us speak inside, Nangong Wan suggested, glancing around. Han Li nodded, and the two of them, along with the gathered cultivators, entered a pavilion on the island. Once seated inside the hall, Nangong Wan dismissed everyone except Tian Qinna. Qinna, how is your dragon cry physique? Han Li asked. Thanks to your guidance, Master, and the glacial essence gifted by fellow Taoist Phoenix, my condition has been completely cured. I am now preparing to advance to the nascent soul stage, Tian Qinna replied respectfully. Good. It seems my efforts were not wasted. Han Li said, a faint smile appearing. China, go invite fellow Taoist Phoenix. Inform her that your master has returned and that we have important matters to discuss. Nangong Wan instructed. Yes, Tiankina replied before departing. Han Li glanced at Nangong Wan with quiet curiosity after China left. I heard you have been searching for ways to reduce the dangers of entering the spatial node. Have you found anything? Nangong Wan asked. I did find some items, but they are not particularly effective. Han Li said, shaking his head. Nangong Wan frowned slightly. In that case, you will need to cooperate with fellow Taoist Phoenix to maximize your chances. There is no need for excessive concern. You possess 2 divine spirit treasures and have mastered the divine essence-fused light. Few cultivators can match you. I also have a defensive treasure prepared for you. What kind of treasure? Han Li asked. Nangong Wan smiled, about to respond, but suddenly fell silent. Moments later, footsteps approached, and a woman in silver robes entered the hall. It was the Ice Phoenix. Nangong Wan immediately stood and said calmly, Please take a seat, fellow Taoist Phoenix. My Tao companion and I were just discussing your joint entry into the spatial node. There's no need for him to enter the spatial node with me, is there? The silver-robed woman asked calmly as she took a seat. Nangong Wan showed no reaction to her indifferent tone and replied in a steady voice, You must be joking, fellow Taoist Phoenix. The spatial node is extremely dangerous. Entering it alone would be no different from courting death. You have seen how unstable it has become over the past few decades. It is likely already close to collapse. It is not impossible for me to enter the spatial node with him. However, I have one condition that he must accept before I agree to cooperate. The silver-robed woman turned her gaze toward Han Li, a strange light flickering in her eyes. What condition? Han Li asked, his curiosity stirred. I do not fully trust you. If we are to enter the spatial node together, we must place mutual restrictions on each other beforehand. In that way, if one of us encounters danger, the other must give full assistance. Otherwise, neither of us will leave the spatial node alive. I will only cooperate if you agree to this, the Ice Phoenix said evenly. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face. I have no objections. This arrangement is acceptable to me as well. The silver-robed woman was slightly surprised by his quick agreement. She gave him a cold glance before continuing. In that case, I will leave to make preparations. This spatial node should remain stable for at least another 30 years. I will return here in exactly 30 years. I hope you will not change your mind. As soon as she finished speaking, she left without waiting for a response. Han Li frowned slightly but said nothing. Nangong Wan stood up and followed her out of the pavilion, seemingly intending to speak with her in private. After they left, Han Li remained seated deep in thought, carefully considering the Ice Phoenix's proposal. A short while later, he looked up just as Nangong Wan returned. It seems you truly will be leaving in 30 years. A trace of reluctance appeared in her eyes. My concern is that the spatial node may collapse before then. Even if you reach the deity transformation stage, you might not be able to ascend to the spirit realm, Han Li said with a sigh. That is not an issue. This world has more than one spatial node. I have already taken the returning sun water. If I reach the deity transformation stage, my lifespan will exceed that of ordinary cultivators of the same realm. I should have enough time to find another spatial node, Nangong Wan replied gently. She stepped closer and leaned into Han Li's arms. Han Li wrapped his arms around her slender form, momentarily lost as he inhaled her faint fragrance. Neither of them spoke. They quietly shared each other's presence. Sunlight filtered through the window, casting their merged silhouettes onto the ground. After a long silence, Han Li spoke softly. Wana, what was that defensive treasure you mentioned earlier? Nangong Wan slowly withdrew from his embrace and adjusted her dress. Do you remember the golden box I obtained in the underground cave during the trial by blood and fire? The golden box. Yes, I remember. That restricted area was actually the hidden abode of an ancient cultivator. The golden box contained a restriction badge that allowed entry into the tallest tower at the center of the area. Even with the badge, one needed at least late nascent soul cultivation to withstand the restrictions there. After I reached that stage, I returned to the state of Yue and entered the tower, where I obtained the ancient cultivator's inheritance. I also found the remains of another cultivator within one of the restrictions. He had clearly entered without a badge and perished there. The treasures he carried were extraordinary, so he must have been powerful in his time. One of those items should be useful to you, so I brought it with me. As she spoke, she tapped her storage pouch. A sphere of shimmering six-colored light appeared within which lay a silver talisman. This is the treasure. Hanli felt a sense of familiarity, but could not immediately recall its origin. I am not certain who refined it. Let me demonstrate its function. Nangongwan tossed the talisman into the air and formed a hand seal while chanting softly. The silver talisman transformed into a burst of light and flew toward her, forming a silver barrier around her body. The barrier flickered intensely and emitted a continuous rumbling sound. At first, Hanli paid little attention. However, as the rumbling grew stronger, he noticed that it was drawing in surrounding spiritual qi, increasing its density within the hall. His expression changed slightly. At that moment, strands of multicolored spiritual light appeared and surged toward Nangongwan, merging into the barrier. The silver barrier began to fluctuate wildly. Layers of light formed one after another around her, each a different color. Soon 6 distinct layers had taken shape. Hanli's eyes narrowed as realization struck him. That is the 6th divine talisman. The 6th divine talisman. So that is its name. You recognize it? Nangongwan asked, slightly surprised while continuing her hand seals. The 6 layers of light condensed into a suit of 6-colored armor that adhered tightly to her body. Brilliant spiritual light flowed across its surface. I believe so. I have never seen it directly, but I read about it in a tome from a great Jin sect. The 6th divine talisman draws upon the world's origin qi, rather than relying on the cultivator's own magic power. Hanli said, his eyes bright. This was one of the 3 secret talismans of the Heavenly Talisman sect. He had long sought its refinement method, but found no clues. Could the remains Nangongwan discovered belong to an elder of that sect? Was that why Xianxia had entered the restricted area? Hanli quickly dismissed these thoughts as unlikely. He stepped forward and carefully examined the armor. Aside from her head and limbs, Nangongwan's body was almost entirely covered. The surface was smooth and faint runes shimmered across it. With his current cultivation, Hanli could clearly sense the immense spiritual power contained within. This is indeed the 6th divine talisman, but according to the records, this is not its full power. You have only activated a portion of it, correct? He asked. Yes, only about 1/10. Nangongwan replied with a slight smile. Good. This will be extremely useful for entering the spatial node. Did you find its refinement method with the remains? Hanli asked. No, only the talisman itself, she said, shaking her head. Hanli showed a hint of disappointment, but quickly smiled. I was being too greedy. Obtaining this talisman is already fortunate. Nangongwan smiled warmly. She lightly tapped the armor, and it reverted to its talisman form. She then exhaled a strand of red light wrapping around the talisman and sending it toward Hanli. He accepted it without hesitation. In the following days, Hanli remained on the island, spending his time with Nangongwan. Both of them understood that regardless of whether he succeeded in ascending, this might be their final time together. The chances of meeting again were extremely slim. They set aside all concerns and quietly cherished their remaining time. 3 years later, while they were drinking tea on a mountain, Hanli's expression suddenly changed. He flicked his sleeve, and a jade talisman appeared in his hand, the myriad distance talisman. He focused on it immediately. The message was brief, but it was enough to bring a rare look of joy to his face. It was from the humanoid puppet. The profound goddess's palm had finally borne fruit. 1 year later, a streak of azure light descended into a secluded ravine within Devilfall Valley. Hanli remained there for several months before leaving again. Time passed quickly. 30 years went by in what felt like an instant. Within the misty sea, a group of cultivators gathered beneath a massive sphere of light. Han Li stood beneath the sphere of light, his gaze lifted upward, his expression solemn. Nangong Wan stood quietly beside him. The others also remained completely silent, as if all were waiting for a specific moment. Among them were Tian China and Shijian, who had already assumed the position of Thousand Bamboo Sect Master. After a long pause, Tian China finally spoke, unable to suppress her concern. Master, will Senior Phoenix truly arrive today? If the seal can only be lifted after noon, it may become troublesome. Do not worry. Fellow Taoist Phoenix sent me a message a month ago. She will arrive today, Han Li replied without turning his head. Tian China fell silent again and continued to wait. A short while later, Han Li suddenly shifted his gaze toward a patch of mist in the distance. The others immediately followed his line of sight. A clear cry echoed from within the mist. It surged and parted, revealing a massive snowy white ice phoenix, its wingspan stretching several tens of feet. With only a few beats of its wings, the phoenix arrived before them. In a flash of spiritual light, it transformed into a silver-robed woman. She looked at Han Li with an indifferent expression. I am not late, am I? Of course not. China, you may begin lifting the seal. Fellow Taoist Phoenix, let us proceed to set our restrictions, Han Li said with a faint smile. As his voice fell, his body turned into a streak of azure light and disappeared into the mist. The silver-robed woman raised an eyebrow, then followed as a streak of silver light. Nangong Wan remained where she stood, watching the direction they had gone, a trace of concern flickering in her eyes. At that moment, Tian China and more than a dozen cultivators rose into the air, arranging themselves into a peculiar formation directly beneath the sphere of light. Spiritual light flickered as they brought out formation plates, formation flags, and various treasures. At Tian China's command, all of them activated their tools simultaneously. Beams and strands of radiant light surged upward, merging into the sphere above. They began the process of lifting the restriction around the spatial node. Time passed slowly. As the restriction weakened, the once indistinct sphere of light grew clearer and more intense. Its color shifted from dull gray to blazing white, like a new sun rising above the misty sea. Even Nangong Wan had to narrow her eyes and avert her gaze from the piercing brilliance. Meanwhile, Tian China and the others had already closed their eyes, guiding their formation tools purely with their spiritual sense. At that moment, a hand gently rested on Nangong Wan's shoulder. A warm male voice spoke beside her ear. Are you still worried? Her body stiffened slightly, then relaxed. She turned with a faint, controlled smile. Han Li stood behind her, looking at her calmly. I am, she admitted softly. But pursuing the great Tao itself defies the natural order. Danger is inevitable. Have you and fellow Taoist Phoenix finished setting your restrictions? Yes. The restrictions are secure and can only be undone by their respective casters. There should be no need to worry about betrayal. Now Han Li replied with a slight smile. Ha! As long as you do not act recklessly, I have no reason to scheme against you. A flash of white light appeared behind Han Li as the silver-robed woman stepped out from a spatial rift. Han Li frowned slightly. Fellow Taoist Phoenix, I suggest you refrain from using spatial abilities for now. You should conserve your magic power for what lies within the spatial node. Rest assured. I understand, she replied, her tone noticeably less hostile than before. Han Li said nothing further. He stepped forward, standing beside Nangong Wan, both of them looking up at the gradually dissolving seal. The silver-robed woman also fell silent. About 15 minutes later, the sphere of light reached its peak brilliance. A dull thunderclap echoed through the air. The white light abruptly receded. The sphere transformed into a pitch-black hole like the gaping maw of a monstrous beast, devoid of any light. Han Li and the silver-robed woman both stirred. Let us go, fellow Taoist Han, she said. Silver light enveloped her as she rose toward the black hole. Han Li's lips moved slightly. He patted his storage pouch. A flash of silver light emerged, and a second Han Li appeared. It was the humanoid puppet. Han Li raised his hand and pressed it onto the puppet's head. A dark, nascent soul emerged and instantly returned to his body. He then pointed at the puppet. Silver light surged as it rapidly shrank, becoming a tiny wooden figure. At nearly the same moment, Han Li flicked his sleeve. 2 small blue cauldrons and a ball of 3 colored flames appeared. One of these treasures will be of little use to me after passing through the spatial node. You may face many trials in this world. Take them, they will aid you, he said calmly, sending the items toward her with a wave of azure light. Without further pause, he rose into the air and flew toward the ice phoenix. Nangong Wan gritted her teeth, catching the treasures with a sweep of her sleeve. She stood still, watching his departing figure, her face slightly pale. The ice phoenix halted before the black void. When Han Li arrived, she asked, "Will you not speak with fellow Taoist Nangong a while longer?" "I am not in a hurry." Her tone carried a rare trace of consideration. Han Li took a steady breath. "There is no need. We have already said all that must be said. Now we focus on crossing the spatial node." He placed a hand atop his head. Azure light flashed as a small azure cauldron appeared. He stomped lightly. A green ruler manifested beneath him, accompanied by the projection of a silver lotus. With a flick of his sleeve, a silver talisman flew out, transforming into a suit of 3-colored armor that fitted closely to his body. Immediately after, 72 small golden swords shot out, circling him as streaks of golden light. He then produced a golden ring and a jade umbrella. A hint of surprise crossed the silver-robed woman's eyes. She responded calmly, releasing over a dozen streaks of white light that became translucent feathers. The feathers swirled and settled into a protective barrier around her. At the same time, silver light formed an image of countless birds paying homage to a phoenix. Then she opened her mouth and expelled a semi-transparent ice arc. It rapidly expanded, growing to over 100 feet in length. She stepped onto it and said, "This heaven-puncturing arc has been nurtured by my glacial essence for over 10,000 years. It will protect us during the initial phase." Han Li stepped onto the arc without hesitation. "Then I will assist." Grey light surged from his body. A small, unremarkable mountain appeared and settled onto the arc. With a hand-seal, grey light spread from the mountain, enveloping the entire vessel. The silver-robed woman sensed its extraordinary nature and reinforced it with her own silver barrier. The arc then shot forward into the black hole, vanishing instantly. Below, everyone watched in silence, their gazes fixed on the spatial node. Yet nothing changed. The black hole remained as it was, as if nothing had occurred. Nangong Wan finally lowered her gaze. "China, leave a few disciples here. The rest may return." "Yes," Tian Qina responded, arranging for 2 core formation disciples to remain. The others departed with Nangong Wan. After a month, there were still no changes. Nangong Wan ordered the entrance sealed once more, leaving guards behind before returning to the scattered star seas. Han Li had not left behind a soul lamp. No one knew whether he had successfully passed through the spatial node or perished within it. This had been his intention all along. After all, it was better to leave behind uncertainty than absolute despair. Han Li lay motionless on the ground, enduring the oppressive heat rising from the sand as he silently kept track of time in his mind. If his judgment was correct, he had already remained here for 3 months, according to the timekeeping of the human world. At present, 3 suns and 4 moons hung in the sky. Han Li had already observed that when night fell, all of the suns would transform into moons. When day returned, those moons would in turn become blazing suns, one after another, until 7 suns occupied the heavens. In other words, there were always 7 luminous celestial bodies in the sky. The only difference lay in their form. During the day, they radiated unbearable heat, while at night, they brought bone-piercing cold. From his observations, both day and night here were extremely prolonged, roughly 3 times longer than in the human world. The temperature difference between the two was also astonishing. Without his special physique, he would likely have perished long ago. This place was clearly no longer part of the human world. However, whether it was the spirit realm, Han Li could not determine. The spiritual qi in this environment was not particularly dense. It seemed comparable to that of an ordinary spirit vein in the human world. Moreover, his arrival had been entirely accidental, leaving him without any certainty regarding his current location. Recalling the events within the spatial node, a trace of lingering fear surfaced in Han Li's eyes. If not for the unexpected accident near the end of the journey, he had no confidence he could have endured the relentless spatial storms that followed. Most of his protective treasures had been destroyed, including the 8-spirit ruler. Had the spirit form talisman not activated at a critical moment, he would have already been annihilated within the spatial node. Even so, his current condition was far from favorable. When he emerged from the spatial node and arrived here, he had been forcibly separated from the Ice Phoenix. The restrictions they had planted within each other's bodies had begun to activate. Fortunately, Han Li possessed numerous secret techniques, and one of them allowed him to forcibly suppress this restriction. Otherwise, the backlash from his magic power alone would have killed him. Even so, the remaining power of the restriction continued to wreak havoc within his body, relentlessly destroying his meridians and physical structure. If not for the wood-birth bead's regenerative ability constantly repairing the damage, his body would have already collapsed into ruin. At present, two opposing forces existed within him. One continuously destroyed his body, while the other repaired it without pause. This process was naturally extremely painful. During this time, he was unable to use any magic power and could not move in the slightest. Worse still, the destructive force was slightly stronger than the regenerative one. If this continued, his body would eventually be destroyed. Faced with this dire situation, Han Li had no choice but to expel all of his treasures into a storage pouch and then employ a secret technique to disperse his nascent soul. The immense power released from the dispersal was then redirected into his body, enhancing his regenerative ability. However, the cost was severe. For over 100 years, he would be left without even a trace of magic power. He would also be unable to use spiritual power or spiritual sense. Even a cultivator stronger than him, upon casually probing his body with spiritual sense, would only see him as an ordinary mortal. Only through a detailed examination could anything unusual be detected. Although the consequences were grave, the effectiveness of this technique was undeniable. Over the past 3 months, the residual power of the restriction had finally been completely eliminated, and most of his meridians had recovered. By his estimation, it would take only about another month before he could regain the ability to move. With effort, he slowly turned his head to the side. What greeted him was an endless expanse of barren grey sand, stretching to the horizon without a single trace of vegetation. He was in a desolate desert. Much of his body had already been buried by the strange sand, making him resemble a lifeless corpse. In the sky, the number of suns gradually decreased from 3 to 2, then to 1. Dusk was approaching. However, instead of closing his eyes to prepare for another freezing night, Han Li's eyes suddenly widened. A faint blue light flickered within them. Moments later, sharp cries echoed from above. Soon after, over 20 black specks appeared in the sky, rapidly descending toward him. Though he could not channel magic power into his eyes, his keen vision allowed him to clearly discern their forms. They were strange black birds with falcon-like heads and bat-like bodies. Each was about 4 to 5 feet in size. From their abdomens extended a pair of sharp claws, and their black membranous wings spread wide, giving them a sinister appearance. Their speed was astonishing. In the blink of an eye, they had descended to just over 300 feet above the ground. It was clear they had chosen Han Li as their prey. A cold glint flashed in Han Li's eyes. His body remained still, yet he suddenly turned his head and inhaled sharply. A small clump of grey sand lifted into the air and gathered into a compact sphere drifting toward him. Just before it reached his mouth, Han Li exhaled gently. The sand sphere stopped abruptly, hovering beside his lips, as if weightless, spinning in place. At this moment, the flock had closed in to just over 100 feet. Han Li could almost smell the foul stench of decaying flesh emanating from their beaks. His expression remained unchanged. Suddenly, his sunken chest expanded, and he expelled a powerful gust of air into the sand sphere. The sphere instantly dispersed into countless specks of azure light, shooting forward and striking the leading birds with dull impacts. The struck birds let out piercing cries and attempted to flee. However, after flying only a short distance, they collapsed to the ground, blood spraying from their bodies. Clearly, they had suffered severe injuries. What followed was unexpected. Upon seeing their injured companions, the remaining birds immediately lost interest in Han Li. They turned instead toward the fallen ones, tearing them apart in an instant. Soon after they departed, each carrying a piece of flesh in their beaks. The desert fell silent once more. Han Li's expression remained calm, as though such scenes were already familiar to him. However, his eyes revealed a thoughtful contemplation. After some time, the final sun dimmed and transformed into a moon. Though he had witnessed this transformation many times, the sight of 7 moons still stirred a subtle sense of wonder within him. Suddenly, a trace of confusion appeared on his face. Unfortunately, he could do nothing more than slightly turn his head. Not long after, a distant rumble arose, accompanied by the sound of galloping hooves. It seemed a group was approaching. Han Li frowned slightly, hesitation appearing in his eyes as he considered whether to reveal his presence. If he remained silent, it would not be easy for them to notice him, given that most of his body was buried beneath the sand. However, he did not need to deliberate for long. A crimson bird about the size of a fist appeared several hundred feet above him. It let out a clear cry that carried over a great distance. It was evidently signaling the approaching group. Han Li let out a faint sigh. The bird was too high for him to deal with using the same method as before. He could only wait. As expected, the ground soon began to tremble, as though something large was rapidly approaching. With a series of low roars, several mounted figures stopped at a distance, observing him with cold expressions. Han Li shifted his gaze toward them. Their attire was unusual, but they were unmistakably human. This brought him a measure of relief. The group consisted entirely of men appearing to range from 20 to 40 years of age. Some wore full suits of gleaming armor, while others were clad only in faintly shimmering bone plates protecting their vital areas. Each held a heavy club-like weapon, thick at the end and covered in sharp spikes, giving them a crude yet deadly appearance. More striking still were their mounts. Each man rode a massive azure wolf. These wolves bore a single straight black horn on their heads and were covered in thick armor. Standing over 20 feet tall, their muscular forms exuded an imposing presence even while still. As Han Li observed them, the knights likewise assessed him. After determining that he posed no threat, their expressions relaxed slightly, though they made no move to approach. One of them, a man over 40 with a deep scar across his face, turned and spoke to a young man beside him. The young man immediately took out a round white disc and urged his wolf forward. He stopped several dozen feet away from Han Li and spoke, but the language was completely incomprehensible. Seeing no response, the young man frowned slightly. He then gently waved the white disc in Han Li's direction. A pillar of azure light as wide as a large bowl shot out from the round disc. Han Li's expression remained calm as he allowed the light to fall upon him. On one hand, he had no means of evasion. On the other, he could already tell that this beam was meant for detection, not an attack. The pillar of light soon withdrew, but the round disc began to glow with intense radiance. The young man lowered his head to look at it, and his expression changed abruptly. He turned and shouted something in shock to the group behind him. His reaction immediately caused a stir. The scar-faced, middle-aged man asked him several questions, then turned to Han Li with a trace of surprise after hearing the reply. Riding his massive wolf steed, the middle-aged man approached and spoke a few words to Han Li. Naturally, Han Li could not understand him. The man stroked his chin, then switched to another language. Han Li stirred slightly upon hearing it. Although still incomprehensible, it sounded somewhat familiar, like a variant of ancient speech from the human world. The middle-aged man noticed this change and became visibly pleased. He quickly tried several other languages, but Han Li could only shake his head with difficulty. The man hesitated, then lowered his weapon and retrieved a yellow wooden box. After opening it, he revealed a thumb-sized yellow bead that emitted a faint spiritual glow. He looked at Han Li, then at the bead, his expression uncertain. After a brief pause, he gritted his teeth as if making a decision. With a flick of his hand, a peculiar ring appeared in his palm. Strange runes were engraved on it, and a small green gem was embedded at its center. He pressed the bead against the gem. Instantly, a dazzling light erupted. Without hesitation, he tossed the object toward Han Li. The moment it touched him, it vanished into his body. Han Li's heart tightened. A cold current surged from the bead and rushed directly toward his mind. If he still possessed his magic power, he could have expelled it easily. But now immobilized, he had no means to resist. Fortunately, these people did not seem hostile, so he remained composed. The cold energy circled through his brain, then dissipated. Immediately after, a sharp pain struck his head as a vast amount of information forcibly poured into his consciousness. Although he could not release his spiritual sense, it remained powerful. His expression changed only slightly as he absorbed everything. In an instant, he mastered a foreign language. It was the same language the middle-aged man had used earlier. Seeing this, the man asked, "You can understand me now, correct? Who are you and why are you here? This is deep within the azure sifting desert. No ordinary person would come here. Azure sifting desert? I've never heard of it. I arrived here by accident through a rather unusual method. I don't know where this place is. I'm just an ordinary mortal with nothing of value to offer. You can call me Han Li." Han Li replied with a faint smile. "A special method. Did you come through a spatial rift as well? Don't worry. This region is filled with such rifts. It's common for strangers to appear from distant places," the man said casually, as if accustomed to it. Han Li fell silent. The explanation he had prepared was no longer necessary. The man gave a slight chuckle. "You don't look like an ordinary mortal. Still, as long as you're not some beast in human form, your origins don't concern us. However, your situation is dangerous. The scorpion tide season will arrive in a few days. Without help, you won't survive. How about signing a contract with our Heavenly East enterprise? We'll take you with us, but you must serve for 20 years. Only after 10 years can you consider leaving." A faint, calculating smile appeared on his face. Han Li only paused briefly before replying, 20 years. Very well. Good. Then sign this blood curse contract." The man laughed and gestured to one of his companions. A knight stepped forward, took out a thick stack of paper, and selected one sheet. He bit his finger and wrote on it with his blood, then dismounted and handed it over. The middle-aged man accepted the sheet and showed it to Han Li. Han Li frowned slightly as he examined it, remaining silent for a long time. The man suddenly realized something. "Have you never seen a blood curse contract?" "This is my first time." "What does it do?" Han Li answered truthfully. To him, it did not look like a contract at all, but rather a talisman. He recognized the runes. They were an ancient script from the human world. However, their arrangement here was unfamiliar. "You've never seen one?" The man seemed surprised. "Did you come from the East?" "Fine, I'll explain. It's simple. If you agree and drip a drop of blood essence onto it, the contract takes effect. If you try to break it, the blood curse will devour part of your soul. You'll regret it more than death. This was created by the blood curse sect. Unless you possess divine power, you cannot escape it." Han Li nodded, slightly appearing thoughtful. He had not yet fully understood the mechanism, but the rune structure was not complex. Given time, he could decipher it. Judging by its construction, it could only restrain Foundation Establishment cultivators. Core Formation cultivators and above would be unaffected. Although he could not use magic power, the immense energy of his nascent soul still filled his body. This curse would not bind him. It would likely dissipate upon entering. It reminded him of the Underworld River page used by Elder Fu, though far inferior. The Underworld River page could even affect nascent soul cultivators to some degree. This contract, however, was likely intended for mortals and seemed common in this region. After considering all this, Han Li said, "I agree, but I cannot move." His expression carried a hint of reluctance, as if seeking an excuse. The middle-aged man gave a cold laugh and gestured. "Help him, little seven." The knight placed the contract on Han Li's chest, grabbed his wrist, and drew a sharp dagger. Without hesitation, he slashed down. A metallic clang rang out. Han Li's skin remained untouched. Everyone was stunned. The knight froze in place. The middle-aged man regained his composure, his expression turning serious. Have you cultivated the profound armor technique or Vajra arts? Have you reached the second layer? I cultivate Vajra arts. I've reached the third layer, Han Li replied calmly, though inwardly he was pleased. This confirmed that he was indeed in the spirit realm. Only mortals here would recognize Vajra arts. The man exhaled slowly, then tossed a short sword to the knight. The third layer. Then you can already fight low-grade demon beasts. It seems I've found something valuable. No wonder a normal dagger couldn't harm you. Try my golden luster sword. It's only a low-grade spirit tool, but as long as you don't actively defend, it should draw blood. A spirit tool. Han Li's expression shifted slightly. The knight drew the sword, and golden light burst forth. Han Li narrowed his eyes. At first glance, it seemed no different from an ordinary treasure. Could mortals in the spirit realm use such items? Looking closer, he noticed a detail. A golden spirit stone was embedded in the hilt. It was a mid-grade metal attribute stone, about 1/5 the size of those in the human world. As he observed, the knight put on a beast-hide glove before gripping the sword. Runes flickered across the glove, and several small spirit stones of different colors were embedded within it. As his gloved hand closed firmly around the hilt of the golden luster sword, the radiant glow surrounding the blade receded. In its place, a far more dangerous and oppressive aura began to emanate from it. Han Li's expression did not change, yet he was genuinely astonished. After putting on this glove, this mortal was truly able to wield what was known as a spirit tool. To Han Li, this was an entirely inconceivable notion. He had once heard that the most exceptional mortal cultivators of the spirit realm could contend with true cultivators, but the demon beast had never mentioned these so-called spirit tools. If such spirit tools were indeed comparable to the treasures of the human world, then it was no surprise that mortals here could slay low-grade cultivators. While Han Li was still processing this revelation, Little Seven raised the golden luster sword and slowly moved it toward Han Li's wrist once more. This time his movements were noticeably more careful and precise. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he gradually activated his cultivation arts. The bright jade arts and the Vajra arts were fundamentally the same technique. The former relied on spiritual power cultivated within the body, while the latter forcibly drew in spiritual power from the external world. In the past, Han Li had naturally cultivated the bright jade arts. However, since he was now unable to mobilize any magic power, he could only rely on the Vajra arts. Furthermore, he had not been truthful with the middle-aged man earlier. With the assistance of the bone-tempering arts and the dragon-scale fruits, he had already reached the fourth layer of the bright jade arts, not merely the third. Thus, unless he deliberately suppressed the output of his Vajra arts, the golden luster sword would still be unable to harm him. As the blade touched his wrist, it paused briefly as if encountering resistance. In the end, however, it managed to cut through his skin, drawing a thin line of blood. The knight quickly seized Han Li's other hand, dipped a finger into the fresh blood, and used it to inscribe several strange runes onto the blood curse contract. As soon as the runes formed, they vanished into the paper without a trace. The knight then turned to Han Li with a smile. All you need to do now is think through the terms of the contract again and accept them in your heart. Han Li complied. At once, a brilliant crimson light erupted from the blood curse contract. The runes seemed to come alive, lifting themselves from the surface before flying into the bodies of both Han Li and the knight. At the same time, the contract ignited on its own, burning to ashes within a cluster of green flames. Ha ha ha. Brother Han, from today onward, you are part of our Heavenly East enterprise. Little Seven carry Brother Han to a carriage. He cannot move right now, so he won't be able to ride a wolf beast, the middle-aged man said, his attitude toward Han Li suddenly becoming much more amiable. Little Seven mounted his wolf steed and rode toward the rear of the group to fetch a carriage. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man remained beside Han Li, chatting with him in a friendly manner. Only then did Han Li learn that the man's name was Zhang Kui, the leader of the first guard squad of the Heavenly East Enterprise. They were currently transporting important cargo through the azure sifting desert. The desert was vast, and it would take several months to traverse it from one end to the other. As they spoke, a massive figure approached from the distance. Little Seven rode ahead of it, appearing to guide its path. Only when it drew closer did Han Li realize that it was an enormous tortoise, standing 40 to 50 feet tall and measuring roughly 70 to 80 feet in length. A wooden carriage had been constructed on its back with a seat positioned near the front of its shell. Sitting there was a thin, grey-robed elderly man, seemingly serving as the driver. The giant tortoise came to a halt before the group. The carriage door opened from within, and a slender figure stepped out. It was a young woman about 15 or 16 years old, dressed in green. She had a round face and delicate, pleasant features. She glanced at Han Li before asking with a smile, "Is he the one Uncle Zhang?" "Shanga, this is Brother Han. He has already joined us, but he is unable to move at the moment. All the other carriages are filled with cargo, so I must trouble you to look after him." Zhang Kui replied respectfully, "I understand. Since he is one of us, I will take care of him." "Bring him up," Xianxia said calmly, her youthful appearance already carrying a faint trace of mature charm. Zhang Kui expressed his thanks before gesturing to his men. Two knights immediately dismounted and pulled Han Li from the sand. One supported his legs, while the other lifted him under the arms. Together they carried him up the tortoise via a rope ladder. Xianxia entered the carriage first. The two knights followed, bringing Han Li inside. Han Li quickly surveyed his surroundings. The carriage was spacious, large enough to accommodate over a dozen people. Aside from Xianxia, 3 other young women were seated inside, each appearing to be between 12 and 17 years old. All of them were attractive and clearly not ordinary individuals. The interior was sparsely furnished, containing only a chair and a few fixed benches. It was evident why Zhang Kui had chosen this place for him. Han Li was laid onto a long bench in the corner. The surface was covered with the yellow hide of an unknown beast, which felt warm and comfortable. The two knights then exited, without casting even a single glance at the young women. Han Li found this somewhat surprising, but he did not dwell on it. He simply offered the women a faint smile before closing his eyes to rest. In truth, his body contained no magic power, and his meridians had yet to fully recover. Cultivation was currently impossible. After enduring months in this desolate desert, scorched by day and frozen by night, while his body repeatedly broke down and healed, he was genuinely exhausted. The 4 young women observed him with curiosity, whispering among themselves. Although their voices were extremely soft, they could not escape Han Li's keen hearing. "Sister Xianxia, what kind of injury does he have? How can he not move at all?" "I don't know. Uncle Zhang said a cultivator will examine him soon." "Uncle Zhang must think highly of him. It's not easy to hire a cultivator. I'm not sure about the details, but Uncle Zhang said he has exceptional potential. Otherwise, he wouldn't let him stay here with us. A rare talent. He looks quite ordinary to me." Han Li remained still, pretending not to hear. Before long, the giant tortoise resumed its journey. Despite its speed, its movement was steady, with only minor jolts. Not long after, it stopped again. Judging by the sounds outside, it had rejoined the main group. Following Zhang Kui's command, the entire squad set off once more. Though Han Li could not see outside, he could tell there were at least 200 to 300 people. The young women continued their conversation for a while, but seeing no reaction from Han Li, they eventually lost interest and began speaking more openly. "I heard this shipment is crucial to the safety of an Yuan city. That's why the city lord paid such a high price to hire us. Otherwise, we wouldn't take orders from such a remote place." "But why did the mistress go ahead alone? That's unusual." "Hey, I'll share something. The mistress went ahead not only because the cargo is important, but also to welcome the 5th young master back." "The 5th young master? The one sent away to cultivate over 10 years ago. Didn't he have a spiritual root and become a cultivator's disciple? Why is he in An Yuan City?" Xianxia asked. "I'm not sure. I heard it directly from the mistress. I've heard the mistress favors him greatly because of his spiritual root. No wonder she went personally. The conversation continued while Han Li lay still, appearing asleep. Suddenly, the eldest among them, a young woman in blue, became alert. "Who's there?" The others stiffened. At that moment, a man's voice sounded from outside. "It is Ainan Kizi. Benefactor Zhang sent me to check on Benefactor Han." The woman relaxed slightly. "My apologies. Liu greets Taoist Nan Kizi. Please come in." She instinctively glanced at Han Li and froze. His eyes were already open. Their gazes met, and there was a faint smile on his face. At that moment, Xianxia opened the carriage door, revealing a yellow-robed Taoist priest and a white-robed elderly man. The Taoist appeared to be over 30, with faint azure light flickering across his face, indicating a certain level of magical cultivation. The elderly man, however, had grey hair and a deeply wrinkled face, giving him a frail appearance. "Old Man Fu, why are you here as well?" Xianxia asked in surprise. The elderly man coughed lightly before replying, "I had no choice. Zhang Kui insisted that I come. He said the new member is a cultivation prodigy who has already reached the 3rd layer of the Vajra arts at such a young age." The 3rd layer of the Vajra arts. Him. Xianxia's eyes widened in clear shock. "Don't be rude, Sister Xianxia. Invite Taoist priest Nan Kizi and Old Man Fu into the carriage," Liu instructed calmly. Xianxia immediately stepped aside and said apologetically, "Please forgive my earlier rudeness." The Taoist priest only smiled before entering. Old Man Fu, however, gave a faint sigh before slowly following him inside. By now the sky was already dimming, yet the group continued forward at full speed without any intention of stopping. "This must be the man Benefactor Zhang mentioned," the Taoist priest asked as his gaze fell on Han Li the moment he entered. "That's correct. I am the new recruit Brother Zhang referred to. I appreciate your concern, but I doubt you will be able to resolve my condition. With a few months of rest, I should recover on my own," Han Li replied calmly. Nan Chizi showed no displeasure at the refusal. Instead, he smiled faintly. "You have already reached the 3rd layer of the Vajra arts, so your strength is not inferior to mine. However, cultivators and body refinement warriors are fundamentally different. I may be able to shorten your recovery time." A trace of surprise flickered in Han Li's eyes. Although his spiritual sense could not leave his body, at such close distance he could still determine that the Taoist priest was a Foundation establishment cultivator. In the human world, cultivators viewed mortals as ants. Even those at the Qi condensation stage treated mortals as inferior beings. Yet this Foundation establishment cultivator spoke to him with such courtesy. The contrast gave Han Li a subtle, unfamiliar feeling. It seemed the endless sky beast had not exaggerated the strength of mortals in the spirit realm. With that thought, Han Li nodded slightly. "Then I will trouble you to take a look." Nan Chizi smiled and raised a hand, revealing an azure bracelet on his wrist. Placing his other hand over it, a copper mirror appeared in his palm. Han Li's expression shifted slightly. The bracelet was clearly a storage treasure, and of a higher grade than his storage pouches. If even a Foundation establishment cultivator possessed such an item, then such treasures were likely common in the spirit realm. Storage pouches were probably no longer used here. Before dispersing his nascent soul, Han Li had stored all of his belongings except for the 2 immortal vanquishing beads inside his storage pouches. He had then buried them over 100 feet underground. As a precaution, he had released his gold-devouring beetles, 6-winged frost centipedes, and weeping soul beast from several spirit beast pouches, instructing them to guard the buried items. The armored earth dragon had not been brought with him. Instead, it remained with Nangong Wan. Thus, aside from the immortal vanquishing beads, the invisible spirit form talisman, and the law destruction eye hidden within his body, all of his treasures, including the heaven void cauldron and azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, had been left behind in the Ai desert. In his current state, he could not use magic power. Carrying those treasures would only invite danger. He would retrieve them after his strength returned. The desert was barren and remote, and with his spirit beasts guarding the area, they should remain safe. As for the mysterious small green vial, Han Li had considered it carefully before deciding to keep it. It appeared ordinary, and even if discovered, it would likely attract no attention. Naturally, Nan Qizi knew nothing of Han Li's thoughts, nor did he realize that Han Li was a deity transformation cultivator. He simply asked a few questions, then waved the copper mirror. A layer of azure light emerged, enveloping most of Han Li's body. Nan Qizi closed his eyes, sensing through the treasure. After a moment, a hint of surprise appeared on his face. He soon opened his eyes and looked at Han Li with a peculiar expression. "What is it?" Han Li asked. "Benefactor Han, you should take better care of yourself. Many of your meridians are damaged. It seems that during your cultivation of the Vajra arts, either the spiritual chi was insufficient, or you lacked supporting medicinal pills. Humans do not possess naturally strong bodies like demon beasts. Body refinement must be approached with caution. Fortunately, the damage is not permanent, and your meridians are already recovering. However, such injuries are difficult to heal quickly. I have no effective treatment or suitable pills. I can only prepare a few pain-relieving talismans to ease your recovery," Nan Qizi said with a wry smile. "Then I thank you in advance," Han Li replied with a slight smile. "Haha, since Taoist priest Nan Qizi has already examined you, it makes little difference whether I do the same. Still, that Zhang boy asked me to come, so I cannot leave without doing anything." The white-robed elderly man said thoughtfully, "You are too modest, Benefactor Fu. The Fu family's profound golden needle techniques have saved countless lives, even benefiting cultivators. You should be far more capable than I am in treating Benefactor Han." Nan Qizi replied. "I am only a nominal disciple of the Fu family. I know nothing of those techniques." "You overestimate me," the elderly man said, shaking his head. Nan Qizi chuckled and stepped aside. The white-robed elderly man approached Han Li and grasped his wrist. With a flick of his other hand, several streaks of golden light shot out. They were thin golden needles, embedding themselves into Han Li's body. A moment ago, Han Li had been unable to move. Yet as soon as the needles entered, he suddenly sat upright as if propelled by a mechanism. "Liu brings something for him to lean on," the elderly man said calmly. "Yes, Shanga bring some blankets and support his back," Liu ordered. Shanga hesitated, clearly reluctant to use her blankets for Han Li, but she complied in the end. Meanwhile, the elderly man sat beside Han Li, closing his eyes as he checked his pulse. Han Li remained silent, observing him carefully. He could sense a faint stream of energy moving rapidly through his body. Without his powerful spiritual sense, it would have been almost impossible to detect. The elderly man seemed to notice his gaze and opened his eyes, meeting Han Li's calm expression. By this time, Shanga had already placed the blankets behind Han Li's back. Han Li leaned against them and caught a faint fragrance. He offered a word of thanks. Shanga responded briefly, her tone neither warm nor cold. Han Li paid no attention and continued observing the elderly man. At that moment, Old Man Fu flicked his wrist, producing another golden needle slightly longer than the others. With practiced precision, he held the needle between two fingers. His arm blurred as he rapidly inserted it into multiple points across Han Li's body. Han Li felt as if countless acupoints had been pierced simultaneously. A throbbing sensation spread through his limbs. Then he realized he could slowly lift his arms. Everyone present inhaled sharply. The four young women looked on with admiration, and even Nan Qizi showed clear approval. As expected, the Fu family's profound golden needle techniques are extraordinary, the Taoist priest said with a smile. "It is nothing remarkable. I have only temporarily restored some mobility. You must not exert force, or your meridians may rupture extensively," the elderly man warned sternly. "Thank you, Old Man Fu," Han Li said, visibly pleased as he flexed his fingers. He had studied similar techniques in the human world and considered himself proficient. Yet compared to Old Man Fu, he fell far short. The skill before him was truly remarkable. However, his expression tightened slightly at the warning. After confirming Han Li could move, Old Man Fu waved his hand. The golden needles withdrew from Han Li's body and vanished into his sleeve. Han Li slowly stepped down from the bench and took a few tentative steps. This is all I can do. You must heal your meridians yourself. I have other matters to attend to, so I will take my leave, the elderly man said, rising to his feet. Nan Chizi nodded, then produced several talismans. With a wave of his hand, they transformed into streaks of azure light and entered Han Li's body. He then stood and prepared to depart as well. The 4 young women escorted them out before closing the carriage door. Han Li sat down once more, closing his eyes as he experienced the effects of the talismans. The 4 women exchanged glances. Liu suddenly smiled and asked Brother Han, "Have you really reached the 3rd layer of the Vajra arts?" "I was merely fortunate," Han Li replied ambiguously. "You appear to be no more than 30 years of age, yet you have already reached such a high level of mastery in the Vajra arts. It is no wonder that leader Jiang holds you in such high regard." Brother Han Liu said, a faint smile on her lips. "You flatter me, Sister Liu. By the way, I have already signed a blood curse contract, yet I know very little about the Heavenly East Enterprise. Could you tell me more about it?" Han Li asked with a calm smile. "It seems you are not from our heavenly origin region, Brother Han. Otherwise, you would not be asking such a question." Liu replied with a soft chuckle, amusement flickering in her eyes. "And why is that? Is the Heavenly East Enterprise well known here?" Han Li asked, his interest piqued. "Well known? That would be an understatement, Brother Han. We are one of the 3 largest enterprises in the entire Heavenly Origin region, with branches in several hundred cities. Our main branch is even located in the Heavenly Origin Sacred City," Liu said, her expression carrying a trace of pride. However, none of this held much meaning for Han Li, who had only recently ascended to the spirit realm. In his view, several hundred cities was not particularly impressive. Even a small nation in the human world could encompass such a number. Yet from Liu's tone, this seemed to be a significant achievement. He could not tell whether this was due to her limited perspective or because the cities in this realm were far larger than those in the human world. Regardless, he maintained a mildly impressed expression, nodded and said, "I see. In that case, our enterprise is indeed quite vast. Earlier, I heard you mention that we are heading to Anyuan City. May I ask where that is and how long it will take us to arrive?" "You sly man, you were eavesdropping on our conversation," a young woman in a red dress said with a playful laugh. Han Li cleared his throat, somewhat speechless. Their voices had been loud enough that it would have been difficult not to overhear. "Shenga, do not be rude. Please do not take her words to heart, Brother Han. She is still young and means no harm," Liu said, first scolding the girl before turning to Han Li with an apologetic expression. In her eyes, although Han Li was only a new member of the Heavenly East Enterprise, his potential was considerable. In the future, he would likely become an important figure within the organization. Naturally, she wished to avoid offending him. Han Li smiled upon hearing this and was about to respond when the carriage suddenly trembled. The giant tortoise beneath them had come to an abrupt stop. Liu's expression shifted as she immediately called out, "What happened, Uncle Wang?" "The Crimson Spirit Sparrow ahead has detected a group of sandbug beasts. They appear to have noticed us," the elderly coachman replied from outside. "It is only a group of sandbug beasts. Send some men to drive them away. We are already running late, so we must not delay further," Liu said, clearly displeased. "The issue is that one of them has evolved into a low-grade insect beast and gained intelligence. If we do not eliminate it, it could cause trouble," the old man replied with a wry smile. "A low-grade insect beast. That is somewhat troublesome, but Leader Jiang has already reached the 5th layer of the Tyrant Tiger arts. With the golden luster sword bestowed by the mistress, dealing with such a creature should not be difficult," Liu analyzed calmly. "That is true, but this insect beast is guarded by several mutated insect beasts. Even for Leader Jiang, engaging them would carry significant risk," the coachman replied hesitantly. "Mutated insect beasts. That does complicate matters. But do we not have Taoist priest Nankizi and the other cultivators? Let them handle this, Liu said after a brief pause. Leader Zhang has already requested their assistance, but they refused. The cultivators are from the Gulu Mountains and will not act unless they are attacked first. The elderly man sighed. Then we are indeed in trouble. I said from the beginning that we should not have hired cultivators from the Gulu Mountains. They are always bound by one restriction or another. Shenga scoffed, wrinkling her nose. Taoist priest Nan Kizi and the others are not at fault. Most cultivators from the Gulu Mountains specialize in insect manipulation techniques. It is simply unfortunate that we encountered insect beasts. I will release what the mistress entrusted to me before she departed to assist Leader Zhang. Inform him and I will join him shortly. Liu said, her expression turning solemn. With that item, we should have no trouble dealing with the insect beasts. The coachman said, visibly relieved. Big sister Liu, are you truly going to release it? If something goes wrong, the mistress will punish you, Shanga said with concern. Do not worry. It has already been tamed by the mistress and possesses a certain degree of intelligence. Its strength is comparable to that of a low-grade demon beast. A few mutated insect beasts will not be an issue. Liu replied with a confident smile before stepping out of the carriage. I have a bad feeling about this. I am going to take a look, Shenga said, biting her lip before following. Shanga and the remaining girl exchanged glances, both revealing wry smiles. Without speaking, they seemed to reach an understanding and also exited the carriage. Thus Han Li was left alone inside. He remained seated, narrowing his eyes slightly deep in thought. Moments later, a thunderous tiger's roar filled with violence and bloodlust echoed nearby. Han Li's expression shifted slightly. He rose to his feet and walked toward the carriage door. After opening it, he stepped out calmly and stood upon the shell of the giant tortoise, gazing into the distance. Under the illumination of the 7 moons in the sky, everything was clearly visible. The caravan stretched for nearly 500 meters, with more than 30 giant tortoises arranged at regular intervals. Most of them carried massive cargo crates, each as large as the tortoises themselves. 4 or 5 armored guards stood atop each one. On both sides, knights rode massive wolf steeds, maintaining tight protection. However, none of these drew Han Li's attention. Instead, his gaze settled on a cuboid object approximately 20 feet tall, covered by a shimmering black cloth. At that moment, the middle-aged man, the 4 young women, and Nan Kizi were gathered around it. Low beast-like growls emanated from beneath the cloth. Runes shimmered across its surface, indicating that it was a low-grade treasure. Liu held a badge in her hand, from which streams of blue light were radiating. Even from a distance, Han Li observed everything clearly through his bright sight spirit eyes. He noticed the green bracelet on Liu's wrist, embedded with tiny spirit stones. A thoughtful expression appeared on his face. It seemed that these so-called spirit tools could only be used by mortals when supplied with an external source of power. The embedded spirit stones were clearly that source. Once their spiritual chi was depleted, the tools would likely become useless. As he considered this, the black cloth absorbed enough blue light and suddenly dissipated into black smoke, revealing an intricately crafted silver beast cage. Inside the cage was a crimson tiger. Aside from its blood-red fur, it appeared no different from an ordinary tiger. Yet merely looking at it caused a sense of unease to arise in all present. As it noticed the crowd, a fierce light flashed through its eyes. Without warning, it lunged violently, crashing against the cage and causing it to tremble. Everyone's expressions changed as they instinctively retreated. Liu took a deep breath and raised her badge again. This time, crimson light began to emerge from it. The moment the tiger saw the red light, the ferocity in its eyes vanished. It lay down quietly at the center of the cage, as docile as a house cat. Jiang Kui and the others let out sighs of relief. At that moment, a sharp bird cry rang out from afar, as if conveying a message. Jiang Kui's expression turned grim as he shouted, "The insect beasts have accelerated and already surrounded us. Prepare for battle. Stay close to the carriages and let them come to us. I will lead a group to eliminate the low-grade insect beast." The rest lack intelligence. Once it dies, they will disperse. His words stirred the entire caravan. Everyone moved toward the cargo-bearing tortoises. The knights drew their blades, sitting atop their wolf steeds with vigilant expressions. At the same time, Liu issued an order, and the cage was opened to release the tiger. The elderly coachman turned to Han Li and said with a smile, "Brother Han, you have not yet recovered from your injuries. It would be best for you to return to the carriage. These sandbug beasts cannot jump, and the carriage is made of heavy iron wood. You will be safe inside. Thank you for your concern. I have never seen sandbug beasts before, so I would like to observe them. If the situation becomes dangerous, I will return," Han Li replied calmly.